spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion.
Hey everybody, it's January 5th, 2012, aka 350 more days until people mysteriously stop talking about Mayan culture. With me all the way across the coast, we have Bob.
How's it going?
And Jason.
Hello. Yes!
And, whoa.
I nailed it.
And we have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about today. Seriously, I don't think we've had this much material ever. I have 12 tabs open on my other computer.
And so
it
do
writes
we.
itself.
So it kind of does. You just put it out there and it's pure gold. And I'm actually kind of surprised we've never done a show on it before, seeing as this is show 30-something now. So
We're getting old.
I know. You believe we've been doing this for almost a year?
It's crazy.
I know.
If it's 30
And I
shows,
still
it's
hate
been
y'all
more
just
than a
the
year.
same.
So what we're going to talk about today is
No, it hasn't.
intelligent design.
Which is not in
And-
that statement.
Math is kicking my ass this morning.
Anyway.
What is?
I'm like, 30, that's more than a year. No, it's not.
No.
No. Almost a year.
It's
Only, what? It hasn't been 32 weeks, it's been slightly more, so.
It's all right. Moving
Yeah.
along.
I'm sorry. Hit your setup again. Go
Okay.
do that one more time, and I'll shut up.
So, we're going to talk about intelligent design this week, which is something that I'm surprised we haven't covered before, as I was saying. It is essentially the argument that biological evolution didn't occur through natural selection, but rather things were created by an intelligent designer. Big, heavy air quotes around that. It's essentially neo-creationism. They're couching evolution, saying, we can't have evolved because that would mean that humans weren't created in God's image. So we're going to remove any trace of religion from this, and we're going to try and sell it as science. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, the intelligent design is simply warmed over creationism, and they've taken creationism and dressed it up in scientific ideas, and they threw some sciencey language at it, and they're trying to put it out into the public consciousness under the guise of science, and it is not.
Yeah. It's actually, you can tell it's such, I like what you called warmed over creationism, because their biggest tool they use to try and get this in the classroom is a textbook called Of Pandas and People. And it used to be a creation textbook. But to sell it as science, what they did is they used a Control F search function to go through and replace anywhere where it said creation or creationism with intelligent design. And there's actually, I believe it's one instance where the word creationism was misspelled, and so it missed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Not
you're
only
left with
not
this
only
little,
are they disingenuous, but they're lazy.
Yeah. It's editorial fatigue on their Control F search function.
But we can talk about their flaws and but the core of the people who believe of intelligent design are the ones who put it forward. Try to fill in the gaps between what science can explain and what we don't understand by saying that it's like we always talk about. They take advantage of people's ignorance of what we know scientifically and say, no, this is because God created this. And the reason we don't understand this is because it's part of the bigger plan.
Yeah.
It does fall into sort of it's kind of a God of the gaps argument to say that there's this aspect of biology that we don't understand, and so we have to attribute some divine entity to it. But the biggest problem that I have with intelligent design is that they say, so they always use the watchmaker analogy. And they always tell the story like they do their own little thought experiment, and it goes like this: imagine you're walking in the desert and you find a watch buried in the sand. Well, the very fact that the watch exists, we have to assume that it had a creator, and it had to be made by somebody, an intelligent designer, and so their intelligent designer is the watchmaker. And the thing about it is, like, when they say intelligent designers, it's exactly like you said, Ken. It's air quotes, and they say, like, out the back of their hand, they're like, "Oh no, it's really God." They don't say it, but that's what they mean. You know,
Yeah.
like why don't you just come out? Why don't they just come out and say, by intelligent designer, we mean God? But they have to. They try to be coy about it. They don't want to say God, because then it becomes a religious argument. So they dress it up in science and avoid the use of the word God.
But intelligent design is a religious argument.
It is absolutely.
Yeah.
But
It is. They don't want it to be portrayed as such. Intelligent design proponents want it to be viewed as science, and this goes back. The evolution religion debate in the U.S. here really goes back to the Scopes monkey trial, which, if you're not familiar, it was, refresh my memory, Bob, was it the 1950s?
yeah, it was in the 50s. Yeah,
50s.
and
And it
a
was
movie, Inherit the Wind.
Yeah, it was a court case because
Shit.
It was a court case.
It was a court case about teaching evolution in schools. Holy shit, we just lost Ken too.
He'll come back. He will.
Well, I don't know where he was going to go with it.
Well, you can set up what the court case is.
It was a court case about teaching evolution in public schools and versus creationism, and the courts upheld that teaching creationism in school violated the Establishment Clause. Is Ken back?
I'm back.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Oh no, it was
Scopes monkey trial.
1925. Sorry. 1925.
Really? Is it that old?
Yeah. It was John Scopes, who was a high school science teacher.
We need your video.
What's that?
We need your video.
Oh. Sorry.
God, Ken.
It's
always something.
I know. Well, maybe if Skype didn't cut out, right? Skype is actually creationist. They're trying to censor us.
I know, right?
He was
is censoring us, man.
Yeah. So, John Thomas Scopes was a high school science teacher in 1925 who was charged with violating the Tennessee Butler Act, which actually made teaching evolution illegal. What happened is it went into this huge trial, and essentially the out case stated that you can't teach creationism in schools because it violates the separation of church and state.
Right, and ever since then, they've been trying to sneak creationism in under other names and under guises. So that they want to, they want to get it in there, but they want to say, well, it's not creationism, and then they said, well, it's creation science, and that didn't work, and so then they completely revamped it, and now it's intelligent design.
Intelligent design was the phrase was first used when in the 80s.
Oh God.
I think it shows up in literature even before then, but it did, like, sort of the movement was started in the 80s.
Well, I know the watchmaker argument goes back to the 19th century. So, I mean, the arguments, are just as old as actual evolution. But it really came into the public eye with the Kitzmiller versus Dover case.
Well, that's 2005.
2005, exactly. Because that's when it got really thrown into the spotlight because the Dover area school district in Pennsylvania wanted to give equal time to intelligent design as was given to biological evolution. And so essentially you had intelligent design on trial. And one of their star witnesses was Michael Behe, who's a biochemist, an incredibly bright man, but he is not, and I can't emphasize this enough, not a biologist. You know?
Well,
it's
the important thing about the Dover trial was that the ruling that came out of that was that intelligent design is creationism, is intelligent design is creationism. That was the big ruling, because all along the proponents of ID have said, no, it's not creationism, it's science. And that Dover decision took the wind out of their sails.
Well, can you pull up an example of what they're saying is science? Like, one of their arguments, I know you got the watchmaker argument, but where's an example that they're saying this has happened, XYZ happened because this is scientifically proven, which is totally false?
What they do, they don't rely on actual observations. And this is the fact that intelligent design is not a theory. A theory is a well-defined explanation for all possible observations, which is refuted by none. Intelligent design relies on picking out parts that either are very difficult to understand or cannot be understood. Or it will create something and say, you can't explain this, and will be too lazy to really give you an argument as to why it's right. And I think this is best put together with the theory of irreducible complexity. Essentially, the idea that certain biological systems are so complex that they couldn't have possibly have been, developed over time, because removing one piece of it would make it completely useless, and therefore, why would you evolve a completely useless thing like that, like the eye,
Yeah, they're that argument of irreducible complexity, it really does fall apart with the eye. And
it falls apart with everything.
Well, I know, but I think the
flagellum and the eye, and I mean, you can go to any one of them and be like, well, sure, right, if you take out this one protein in, the flagellum, it stops moving. But guess what? You have another tool that a cell could use for something.
Yeah.
And you could break it down all the way. I've seen, and I'm not at all a biochemist, but I've seen the argument where they literally took a flagellum and just stripped away one protein, and it actually changed the flagellum from one thing into another thing that cells use. And then they stripped it down all the way down to the point where it was just a simple gateway to pull in certain nutrients.
Yeah, the flagellum is an interesting example, and it does. If you start removing components, it doesn't make it completely useless, and it presupposes this idea that every component is complete and perfect into itself and doesn't have any development going on, on its own. And with with the idea of the flagellum, all right, yeah, so you've got this, it's like a really fine-tuned molecular motor, and it works great. But you take away one thing, and now the flagellum moves maybe sideways, and it provides some motion, but it doesn't, you don't get the mobility that the flagellum provided previously. So, okay, yeah, it doesn't work, but it doesn't mean it's not completely useful, or it doesn't mean it's completely useless. It could have some function and some use.
And
Yeah.
the flip side of that argument is that if with intelligent design, it's been stated, if evolution existed on all levels, then we would have new species and we would have new offsprings and we would have new evidence of evolution, because it wouldn't just stop. They said that we haven't seen any new creatures, animals, plants, whatever, because of evolution.
Which is incredibly ignorant, because we do see that, and that's we see it with MRSA. We see it even in larger multicellular organisms. There is a island off the coast of Italy where small lizards were brought, and over the last, I don't know, it was half a century, I think, the lizards have actually adapted to their environment. Their heads became wider, they became slightly longer, they even developed new organs to eat what is on the island.
Well,
it's biological evolution in play.
Right, it is happening, but also speciation occurs over vast amounts of time, not just the 50 or so years in which we can observe it.
Yeah.
Speciation takes a long, long time, and so I think intelligent design sort of ignores I don't know. It has to seem to almost ignore the fossil record, and ignore the fact that evolution occurs over geologic time, not just the span of one human life.
Do you think intelligent design gets its foothold because people? It's easier for people to accept what they're told than it is for them to research what they're told. It's easy for them to say, well, yeah, we're not seeing biological changes. We're not seeing evolutionary changes. I'm not seeing it, so it must be true. But I'm not going to look for it any further.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, science is hard. And I've said that before. I'm not a scientist. Science is fucking difficult, man. There's a lot to do and to think about. And not everyone gets it because our brains are not designed, to use the word designed, our brains are not fit to comprehend complex subjects like science and mathematics. Really.
Ken, I don't mean to interrupt. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm going to say it's okay to use the word designed.
Yeah.
It's okay because our brains are designed by the processes of evolution and natural selection, not by a divine agent. It's okay to say design, because where they make the mistake is that they assume they say that design implies a designer, and when what they're trying to do in their very manifesto is that they want to undermine the naturalistic worldview. That's what they want to do. They want to say that design implies a designer, and that designer is God. Although they're coy about it and they don't say it.
Yeah. Which we'll actually get. You mentioned their manifesto, and we'll get into that shortly.
Well,
I think
Jason,
that's a whole other can of worms right there.
Part of their manifesto, like you said, is they're insinuating themselves into the public conscious in a way that's almost, I don't want to say sinister, but I don't have a better word for it. They have a policy, they call it the wedge strategy, and
we talked about that.
They just want to, they get a piece of it in there, and so part of their strategy is to undermine evolution. They're not just presenting a competing theory, and they're not just presenting the merits of their competing theory. They're seeking to undermine the theory of evolution. And hey, did you see the thing where they had the Discovery Institute had their list of 500 scientists who don't support evolution or something like that?
Yeah. It's funny because I saw a video where someone went through the list and they weeded out all the non-biologists, and the 500 boils down to like 3 biologists.
Yeah, and those guys are quacks.
Yeah. I mean,
They had non-biologists, but they were PhDs, so they were like 500 PhDs that don't support evolution.
They're mostly PhDs in like computer engineering.
Yeah.
Like
And even that list, what they had those guys agree to was the statement was worded like the theory of evolution cannot completely explain 100% all of the diversity of life found on the planet. And so even their wording was kind of like weasel words, where maybe the guy, even if he wasn't an expert in it, would go, yeah, okay, maybe, which isn't really the case. And so there's I forget the organization that she's part of, but it's that lady. Her name is Eugenie Scott, and she was a key player in the Dover trial. And she's part of an organization, and they have their own list of 500 biological scientists named Steve who support evolution.
Yeah, it's really funny because you get into it and it's like you get people don't really understand what a scientist or someone who has a PhD, what that really means. They're incredibly smart, yes, but they're incredibly smart about one small facet
they're very
of
focused.
their field. But
like you talked about what intelligent design does and why it's junk science. And one of the things that came out of the Dover trial was so here's the thing about science. You talk about science is hard, and I agree, and I think sometimes the concepts of science, the conclusions that we draw from science are sometimes difficult. But what science really, to me, is it's a method. It's a rigorous method about how to get a right answer. And one of the things about a good theory in science is that it has predictive power. And so with the theory of evolution, we can make predictions. They've done it. We can predict.
Yeah.
The hypothesis is that birds evolved from dinosaurs, and it should have happened about this time. And so let's predict that we would find, a transitional species, and it would occur about this time in the fossil record. And so let's go looking for it, and then they found it, right? That's Archaeopteryx.
Yeah, or Tiktaalik.
Tiktaalik is another good one.
A great example of a species that you see. What is he called? He's called a fishapod because he was a fish, but you began to see like the evolution of legs and feet. He was one of those species between amphibians and fish.
Right. So evolution is a robust theory that makes predictions that we can test. And in the Dover trial, I forget who got asked the question, but one of the ID guys was asked, okay, if you want to present intelligent design as a theory, what experiment could you do that could test it? Or what prediction would it make that we could investigate to test? And they had no answer because it doesn't make any predictions. It doesn't make any testable hypotheses. It just assumes it's one way to argue for a divine entity.
Yeah, and I like it because it shows the difference between what science is and what religion is. And I think it was Penn Jillette who said that you could take religion, every single religion in the world, and just wipe out any trace of any religious claim that exists today. And in 5,000 years, you might have crazy ideas and weird religious notions, but they will not be the same as the ones that exist today. It'll never manifest itself the same again. But if you did that with science, and took all of science and wiped it out, someone would eventually figure out the things that we know today again.
Yeah. Yeah, we would eventually get there.
Because science doesn't stop being true just because people don't understand it or don't know about it.
That very idea is illustrated by the story of evolution itself, where everybody knows Darwin, but everybody forgets Alfred Russel Wallace, who arrived at the same conclusion at the same time, independently of Darwin.
Yeah, he was the Australian, right, who was going to present his paper on the same thing to the...
think about like calculus. The same time that Newton was inventing calculus, which he gets all the credit for it, right? But we always forget Leibniz was doing it too. It was two guys that came to the same conclusions at the same time, independently of one another. And these are regarded as almost universal truths.
That's because they were just sending emails back and forth.
Yeah. They had a good email correspondence going. I totally agree with you when you say that science is hard, and I'll even go a step forward. I'll even say that science is unfair. It's biased and it's unfair, and it's biased towards the truth, and it's unfair towards bad ideas, and the intelligent design movement. They want to insinuate themselves into the scientific community, and they do it using ideas that we find very just and almost American, where they say things like, well, we just want equal time, and we just want, we want everybody to play nice, and we want a fair, equitable arrangement where both sides get to be told, and they say like, oh, well, we're not saying that evolution is wrong. We're just saying you should teach the controversy, and those are things that's not what science is about.
Yeah,
science is a meat grinder
that's even
of
more
ideas.
Frustrating because they don't give equal time to other controversies. Like they don't give equal time to astrology in astronomy class. They don't give equal time
abortion.
They don't give equal time to magic and physics. They don't give equal time to alchemy in chemistry. They don't give equal time to phrenology in neuroscience courses. They don't give equal time to the theory
equal time is not a scientific notion.
Yeah, they don't give equal time to the fact that the idea that aliens created Stonehenge or the pyramids in history class.
We don't have to. Everybody knows that's true.
Yeah. Why would they?
But I think that strategy of the intelligent design movement of fairness and equal time, it's been really effective. It's been so effective that it's managed to it sits in the front of everybody's brain where it's just sort of like, and the perception is that this is just one of many competing valid scientific ideas, and it is not. It is not a valid scientific idea.
Could it ever be?
No. It's junk science that's holding on, and not only. And here's why it holds on, because it really, like you said, it has its foundations in creationism, and all they do is every time it gets shot down, it gets repackaged as something else. The ideas are all the same. It's just they repackage it and repurpose it and try to get it through the door in another disguise. And so, as of the 2005 trial, intelligent design has been sort of revealed to be warmed over creationism, and so everybody's kind of holding their breath to see, like, what are they going to do next? Like, where is it going to go next? How are they going to try and repackage it and repurpose it and put it through the mail slot again?
Well, apparently, intelligent design is still getting footholds. It still seems to be not going away. It actually seems like to be getting stronger, because, I mean, like if you type it in, like we talked earlier, if you type it in Google, the first 3 search pages is nothing but Christian propaganda on it. You can't get a balanced view on it by just doing a basic search. like you would with most things.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of telling in that the reason that those pages are listed first in Google is because they're paying for them to be so. It's not.
Well, they're not
based
ad
on-
pages. They're
They're not ad pages, but they're engineering. They're jockeying for those first few positions, and they're taking the steps to make sure that they're there.
no. I just think there's not enough people on the other side trying to counter it. They have free range with it.
And that's true, and so, and I think the reason for that is that the other people who aren't really understand evolution are busy working in academia, writing papers in journals, and don't have time to be worried about what Google says.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's also the problem, like, scientists are very, very bad at PR. They're very bad at explaining things to people who aren't scientists or aren't scientifically minded. Again, because science is really hard. It's hard to explain things. And I feel like most scientists are not Carl Sagan. They're not Neil deGrasse Tyson. They're not even Bill Nye, you know? They're not capable of really putting themselves out there in a manner with which the public can see them and, you know, understand and get at what they're trying to explain, you know? And that's science's biggest hurdle to beating religious claims, because religion is by nature PR.
Yeah.
It's the ability to come up with a crackpot theory and sell it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jesus has a great agent.
Oh,
His
fucking
PR
great agent.
department
I mean,
is killing it.
mm-hmm.
And you know, we do need more guys like
Tim Tebow.
yeah, like you know, like we need more guys like Sagan and Tyson and not but I think Dawkins is up there with that, and you know, we just lost Christopher Hitchens. I mean, we need more people that are vocal about what science has to say about the world.
And each and every one of those individuals, have said that you should not just be silent about this. You should be out in the forefront shooting down ignorance.
Yeah. You know, I used to, you know, before I understand the appeal of intelligent design, I think, because again, it's one of those things that sort of, you know, we always say like the telltale sign that something's a crack theory is when somebody's, you know, QED argument is it just makes sense. And
yeah.
And you know, when I was a lot younger, it, you know, especially in the 80s when the intelligent design movement was getting going, I was like, wow, it does. It has a sense to it. It makes sense. It appeals to our imperfect brains. And
it was like the statement where they say, well, you know, God exists and evolution and creation can work together, because how do we know that God didn't use evolution to create the world?
Well, that's exactly how I thought of it too.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, well, that sort of seems okay. But then, you know, if you look into it further, if you take the time to study the matter, maybe crack a book and read something, the evidence becomes there doesn't need to be a designer. It's just natural selection and random events have conspired over vast amounts of time to you know, make the world as it is today. And like one of the things that the intelligent design community, I think that they fail to respect the vast amount of time that life has been on the planet, and
2000
and it's hard for us to grasp that. It's so much time that we have trouble thinking about that much time, that big of a number.
Yeah, I mean, because the numbers are impossible to think about. Now, here's the thing, and this is what always, like, baffled me, because I used to think the same thing. I was like, oh, maybe God did use evolution. If God used evolution to create the world, then he is an awful designer. He should not be in charge of designing anything.
Which,
Because
I mean, if he used evolution to create the world, then the first couple chapters in the Bible are pointless.
yeah, well, yeah. You know, the 99.999% of all species that have ever existed throughout all of Earth's history have become extinct.
Yeah, right. Dawkins always says like there's a lot more ways to be dead than there are to be alive.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think about it, like, but I don't know, there's so many species. You know, people just think about what's alive today, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah. You think about every single species that's existed over the past, 4 billion years, and most of them have been dead and gone for millions of years, millions upon millions of years.
Yeah, that vast amount of time. The best illustration I can think of about the way to think of how this vast time affects things would be the analogy of the guy playing poker. If you were dealt a royal flush in poker, which is the best winning hand, the odds of being dealt a royal flush are incredibly, incredibly slim. And I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but it's very, very slim. However, if you played poker every day of your life for 1,000,000 years, not only would you expect to have been dealt a royal flush, but it would be inevitable. It wouldn't be a surprise. You would just, if you did it that long every day for that vast amount of time, when you were dealt a royal flush, you would be like, oh, okay, well, it wouldn't be a big deal because it would be inevitable.
Yeah, it's called the law of large numbers. You think, like, what is the chance of a snowflake falling from a cloud and landing on one specific location, right? But it happens every time it snows. Every single location that is hit with snow has an equal chance of infinitely obscure, like huge number for each snowflake to hit that one spot. But it does. It's these people, they like to couch it in numbers that seem like, oh, that's crazy. That could never happen. But it does because of the huge numbers involved and the huge amount of times, like...
Right, the improbable becomes inevitable.
Yeah, it's inevitable. Of course it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, I think ID ignores that. It has to.
It absolutely has to.
It points to these, the series of unlikely events, and it says, oh, it has to have a supernatural agent, and it just bothers me the way that ID has that aspect of supernatural agency to it. It kills me because that undermines all of science altogether. If you allow any supernatural agency in science, then my experiment will work for me because I prayed for it to be so. Like you can invoke that supernatural agency. My experiment works and yours doesn't. So how can science move forward that way? The one of the cruxes of science is that there's reproducibility. The experiment works the same for you and for me and for everybody who does it, provided we do it the same way, not based on who prayed for it or not.
Yeah. Because how would you test that?
Yeah.
How would you test it? Like, actually you can't test prayer. That's been proven. I'm just thinking of the intercessory prayer for sick people.
It doesn't work.
I love it. Actually, it showed that people who were being prayed for and knew they were being prayed for statistically did worse in their recovery.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just ID is it's the I don't know if it's wolf in sheep's clothing is a correct metaphor or not.
I think so. Because it preys on the idea that, science is hard to understand, and there are areas of science that are still mysterious. In science, it's okay to say we don't know yet.
Yeah.
shit, we don't know a lot of things. You know, we don't know anything before the first like couple milliseconds after the Big Bang. We know nothing about that because, you know, physics as we understand it falls apart.
Yeah, but you know, there's things that science doesn't understand, but you can also put the word "yet" at the end of it.
Yet, that's the exact thing. But that's how we understand science. It's like, you know, we don't understand it yet. We will eventually. We'll get to that point. We will understand these things because we have the tools that discriminate what is a good idea versus what is a bad idea. And we can make predictions and we can test, and it's you know, the scientific method allows for that. Whereas coming up with a crackpot theory and saying, you know, oh, this is a theory, not only does an injustice to.
Yeah, but you know, I think intelligent design is maybe just a little bit more sinister than that. In that it's a theory that was cooked up to achieve an agenda. They have a purpose, and it wasn't like somebody came up with intelligent design and thought, oh wow, this might be the case or this might be a theory. Let's go see if we can test this and let's search for truth. It was something that was like, how can we achieve this agenda? How can we, you know, work towards these aims of insinuating religion and theism into society? Oh well, we're gonna make up something that's gonna get us there, and that's what intelligent design is. It's a means to an end.
Yeah.
It's not a theory in its own right. It doesn't have predictive power. It is a way to push an ideological agenda.
It's a theological argument.
You know, it's entirely a theological argument. And to couch it in science is that's just a disguise. It really is. And you know, if you want to have the theological argument, that's fine. If you want to talk about the theology or something, then fine. And then that becomes maybe a philosophical discussion with, you know, the maybe more subtle and nuanced than we're allowing it, but it's not science. It's not a scientific argument. It is not a scientific theory.
It's a good discussion.
I would say that even science is philosophy. It is.
Science it is. Agreed, but it's a structured, rigorous philosophy.
It's a branch of epistemology that relies on observable evidence and logic. Simple as that.
Yeah.
It is philosophy. Without philosophy, science falls apart. And I think one of the things that, you know, ID people and even religious people in general like to fall back on is that most people sort of try to separate science and philosophy. You know, say, oh yeah, well, science has its toys and its gadgets, and, you know, go back to your chemistry set. You know, we'll deal with the big picture. You know, why are we here stuff, and that's philosophy. And it's not. Like, science is integrated into how we know what we know, which is, I would say, one of the biggest philosophical areas there is.
Yeah, well, I mean, science is it is how we know what we know, but it's also how we know what's true.
Which is one of the biggest philosophical questions there is.
Yeah.
You know?
It does. I mean, and you're right. Science doesn't have all the answers, and it can't, because, you know, largely what science says is what something isn't. And so it's hard to fill in all the gaps. You know, the funny thing about the gaps, too, is once you fill in one gap, you create two more. So it's hard to, you know, be all things at all times to all people. But I just think that even like the real fundamental stuff about science, intelligent design is just ignoring. It just ignores it completely. It doesn't have predictive power, which is one of the biggest things in science. If you're going to have a scientific theory, it has to have predictive power.
Yeah. And once again, intelligent design does not. It doesn't make a prediction. It doesn't. There's nothing in intelligent design that says, "Hey, look at this because of this," you know. And
Yeah.
I think that's another thing about intelligent design is they label themselves as a theory, but a theory has to be able to make a prediction.
Well, there are a lot of theories out there, and those theories get evaluated and then kicked to the curb if they're no good. But ID, it has been evaluated, it has been determined to be junk, and it refuses to be kicked to the curb. I don't know why it keeps holding on. But I don't know why, but I think it's because it's presenting itself in those arguments of fairness and equity that we as people, Americans, like that idea.
Yeah.
And again, like, its QED argument is that it makes sense. Well, under closer scrutiny, it doesn't. But I don't know, maybe people aren't willing to put the time in to scrutinize it.
Or, I mean, well, again, it comes down to putting things into a manner with which people can understand the scrutiny. Basic science literacy in this country is terrible. You ask people to define what a theory is on the street, I'm going to say, 2 out of 3 times you're not going to get a correct answer.
Yeah.
And people say,
well, that would be like a whole other
is when people say
rant.
Evolution is just a theory. Just a theory.
That drives me up a
wall. So is gravity.
Yeah, so is gravity. So is the germ theory of illness. So is, heliocentrism.
I think that's a semantic argument that is made by dumb people, I guess. I don't know. That's just, as soon as somebody says like, "Oh, well, it's just a theory," I just want to. I don't know. It really is frustrating.
So much more. It plays off the fact that most people don't know what a theory is. They think a theory is just a guess. Most people, when they think theory, they think the colloquial sense that, like, oh yeah, I have a theory who,
Sherlock Holmes,
dropped the apple pie out the window. Whereas a theory in science is the best you get. Hands down, that is the best you get in science. The only thing more concrete than a theory is a law, and a law is delegated strictly to the realm of mathematics and only in closed systems.
Yeah. I was trying to, in preparing for today's show, to the extent which I got to prepare.
You tried to read up on all science.
Yeah, I read up on all of science.
I must go become an expert in all science.
I was flipping through. I have a copy of the Dawkins book on evolution called The Greatest Show on Earth, and it was really a good read, and he really does dismantle a lot of arguments that are made to undermine evolution, and I don't know, he really covers all the bases there. I mean, I just.
Because he's an evolutionary biologist. I'm sure he has to deal with this shit all the time.
Yeah, I know. Maybe he's tired of talking about it.
We can sit here and pontificate on whatever aspect. None of us are biologists. He is, and I'm sure it's incredibly frustrating to see, like, his work, which is incredibly difficult and incredibly nuanced and, incredibly erudite, dismantled by, the peanut butter man.
Yeah.
Which we're going to play that right now.
The peanut butter guy.
Say this, any theory on the origin of life on the Earth, or any other planet as far as that's concerned, is a fairy tale.
A fairy tale, pure and simple. Life from non-life, apart from God's direct intervention, is a fairy tale. But despite that obvious truth, evolutionists continue to build their supposedly scientific case on a foundation that virtually rules out everything that follows after it.
Evolution teaches that energy, such as lightning or heat, plus matter, can occasionally create new life. Yet our entire food industry rests on the fact that this can never happen. If we examine a jar of peanut butter, it contains matter and is exposed to light and heat. But we never find new life inside unless an outside life contaminates it.
If the theory of evolution was viable, then I should occasionally, by subjecting this to energy, end up having new life. Now we go down to the store, and if I open this jar of peanut butter, maybe not often, but on some occasion, I should find new life inside. And so when we open the jar of peanut butter, we look in there, there's no new life. And aren't you glad, okay? Now, you may smile at this, but hopefully you'll never forget it, because you and I conduct, collectively, over 1 billion experiments every year, and we've done that for virtually 100 years. And we never encounter new life. In fact, the entire food industry of the world depends on the fact that evolution doesn't happen.
Go.
All right. Yeah, so I mean the peanut butter guy, or we could talk about the banana man, Ray Comfort and his little sidekick.
The guy's argument for why isn't life evolving in a jar of peanut butter is he's ignoring all of the nuance that we were talking about earlier. I mean, for the time. You know what? Maybe if you had that jar of peanut butter in the right conditions enough times over a span of 5 million years, something might actually evolve out of it. I can't know that, but it might be, but not for the whole, couple of months that it's sitting on the shelf.
There's only 2 things that I know about peanut butter. 1, it's delicious, and 2, if you choke on it, there's no going back.
No going back.
Yeah.
I think it was it may have been one of the statements out of the that peanut butter guy drives me crazy too, because he it's the same line of thinking where one of the it was a creationist guy or an ID guy where they said that they were talking about how improbable evolution is, and they were saying, you would have us believe that hydrogen, a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas, that given enough time, it becomes people. And he's saying that sarcastically, but I'm like, that's exactly right. Like, you hit the nail right on the head. That's exactly true. But it doesn't happen over a weekend. It happens over billions of years. It happened over the 14.7 billion year span of the universe.
Yeah,
that's a long time. But just the his incredulous nature about it was, I was like, that's exactly right. And the thing is, I find that to be incredibly amazing. I think that's that simple notion that he was sort of shrugging off. I think that in and of itself is really, really, really grand.
It's cool.
And amazing.
It's awesome.
And it doesn't need a divine entity, and yet they sort of shrug it off and want a Santa Claus explanation for things.
Yeah. Because if it's not concise and not easy to just put down right there, be like, oh, this is what worked. If you can't put it into like a 5-second media soundbite, then that couldn't have happened. That's ridiculous. It's so much easier to say, God did it, or God, than to explain hydrogen fuel stars, burns them up, puts them into, creates helium, and when stars die, they expel heavier elements, which then form other stars, and those are chemical engines right there, just pounding away and creating heavier and denser elements, which then create everything else.
Yeah.
Which then you get a few of the right elements in the right proportions in just the right area, and that's when the magic happens, man. Like that's the fact that life doesn't exist everywhere in the universe makes it that much more incredible.
Yeah, but again, we're talking that idea of no matter how improbable or unlikely, given enough time, it becomes inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I say, oh, it's too incredible. That's assuming that there's one planet and one star, and that's it, and that's all you got, and it happened. And then it's a long shot. But how many billions of stars are there? I mean, shit, there's several planets in our solar system alone, and we're the only one with life. Like, if this was an intelligent designer, what a fucking waste of space, man. Like,
yeah.
Created the entire universe to populate one small piece of dust with life? That's ridiculous.
That is kind of the funny aspect of intelligent design is that they assume that the design is perfect and that the designer is all knowing, and he does a shit job.
Dude, creates bipedal, terrestrial life form as the highest form of life, makes 70% of the planet salt water.
Yeah.
Like
really, what a shitty job he's done.
Yeah. If he can suspend physics to do whatever he needs to do, then why allow physics to take place at all? Why not just suspend physics entirely?
Yeah, and when I say that, I don't mean like the world is shit and that I don't like life. What I'm saying is that
Why do you hate?
I recognize that as biological organisms, we are imperfectly made. Like, we are imperfectly grown. We have flaws. There are faults. The design is not the optimum one. It's the optimum one for making more imperfect copies of ourselves. Does a really good job of that. But for other things that go along with it, then it could be better.
You know what else God created? Time limits.
Oh, I was gonna say not the crocoduck.
Yeah. The crocoduck is awesome.
Kirk Cameron makes me feel all stabby.
You should have him on the show.
Oh my gosh. He's just such an ignorant wastoid.
Oh, God. It's like his acting career went, so he decided to, team up with the one person who would put a camera in front of him.
Yeah, he does a lot of Christian films.
He does.
Yeah, B movies made by Christians that are
There's
only
nothing wrong with B
Christians.
movies. If you're on this network, there's nothing wrong with it. No,
there's nothing wrong with B movies. I love, Bad Taste and Lobstermen from Mars, and I mean, I grew up with Mystery Science Theater 3000. I'm gonna have a Mystery Science Theater 3000 tattoo on my leg.
We need to have a Mystery Science Theater religious show where we watch biblical videos, but we do it.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
Nice, and just provide terrible overdubbing.
Yeah,
it's on. That's our next project.
All right,
but with that, we got to wrap this one up.
We can watch Golgotha Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, Passion of the Christ.
That'd be awesome.
I wouldn't want to do that to anybody.
Latter-day
All right,
Saints
so
videos.
I guess that's about it time wise.
Yep.
It's fast. All right, well,
could we slept?
I know. We really moved through this. There's so much to talk about. Fuck, I want to talk about so much more.
Well, maybe we'll do it again next week.
Maybe. Fine-tuned universe. Goldilocks zone. So much shit to talk about.
So before you give the emails and the phones and stuff, both of y'all should recommend a book or a website or both if people want to learn more about, the non-intelligent design.
Sure. I get the two easy ones. I mean, we mentioned the greatest show on earth, which it's subtitled "The Evidence for Evolution," and that's pretty much what it is. And then he also wrote another book called it was Dawkins, by the way. Dawkins' his previous book, The Blind Watchmaker, is really good, and he goes to great lengths to show how there doesn't need to be a divine entity behind biology. It's just sort of a naturally occurring phenomena that, given enough time and space, will the speciation and these changes is what you get. It's really good. Blind Watchmaker, greatest show on earth.
Okay, what about you, Ken?
Yeah. I really like Talk Origins, which is a website you can go to, and it's subtitled "Exploring the Creation Evolution
What is
Controversy."
it? Spell it out.
Talk. Yeah. It's just talkorigins.org.
TALK? Is it?
Yep.
Okay, just making sure that's what you said.
And like I have one of their pages up here about Michael Behe, and it's really good. It explains it. It provides lots of links, which I like. Even if a website is crap, if it provides a lot of links to good material, which this site isn't crap, I enjoy it. Links are a good sign. So
Awesome. Take us out.
all right. So what do you guys think about irreducible complexity or the watchmaker or any of these ideas? Do you have something you want to say? Do you think we were wrong on something? You can always let us know. You need to pull up the phone number, but Jason will put it right here. It's 757. I can't talk and type at the same time. Oh my God. Well, how about this while I'm waiting for this to come up? You can send us an email at nonreligious@zombie-popcorn.com. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/thisnonreligiouslife. You can listen to our shows on Stitcher Radio. You can go to Google Plus and, circle us there or whatever you call it on Google Plus. You can call us 757-337-2195 and leave a voicemail.
We don't get enough voicemails. We need more voicemails.
Yeah, I like, I want to hear, Jason call me up and be like, dude, we just got the craziest voicemail. And then, he has to play it for me over Skype or something. But send us any material you want us to cover. If you think we should talk about something happening in your area you want us to talk about, just let us know, all right? Am I forgetting any of them?
Nope.
Email, Facebook,
just
Google
go to
Plus,
zombiepopcorn.com.
Stitcher.
You'll get all the links.
Yeah, right there. Sign up for our newsletter.
Yes.
We send out a newsletter every week. And that'll let you know about this show as well as all the other wonderful shows on the network. So until next week, everyone.
Later.
Peace.
Just got out here.
I thought I was a good Christian.
Jesus died on a cross. I go to church every Sunday. Just got out here. Then I read this. It says Jesus died on a cross for a rotten hooker.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday. I'm a very religious person.
I thought I was a good Christian. The very lies the serpent told to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel